now for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning. Let's bring in Arise analyst Dr. Constance Ikwoku. Good morning, Dr. Constance.
Good morning, Yolanda.
Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you. Good morning, Benga and Vimbai.
Talk of life.
Talk of life.
001 of Africa, as Benga says.
And the Oracle of Africa's headlines.
Yes.
I don't know about that. Benga, you're on your own. With all those adulations.
OYO.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
We're only doing what we can.
Yes.
Everybody's equally contributing. You know, it's a teamwork, right?
Yes.
Without
That's
a team,
right.
you cannot get there. So everybody's fantastic in Arise.
And Doc, I have to say, I enjoy waking up to you. Actually, the newspaper review, if I'm not on this program, is how I start my
You
day.
can see that.
Oh,
you
lovely.
can
Good
catch
to
that
know.
elitist feeling. I enjoy waking up to you while we're here. It's not fair.
Now we're in the trenches together. So
Thank you. I'm humbled. You know, people tell me, "Oh, come on, you guys are the Rise. Your chairman, you know, employs the best. You guys are all great. So, everyone doing a wonderful job." Hello there, and welcome to the program. We'll be looking at those stories that are shaping the agenda for you today. Let's kick off with this day newspaper. This morning, fiscal and economic news dominate the front pages. There's also security and legal cases with regard to industrial actions, political party dynamics, military developments, as well as governance and the rule of law. This day has gone with news that the president has once again intervened in Rivers State political crisis by asking Minister Wike to drop the impeachment proceeding against Governor Fubara. The African Democratic Congress digs in with criticism of the current government as its national chairman, David Mack, blames the ruling All Progressives Congress for widespread poverty and hardship. The window story at Investopia, UAE eyes over $10 billion in Nigeria's infrastructure, agriculture, tech sectors. Leadership raises concern about hike in electricity tariff as government plans to end subsidy payments. Federal government also narrates how suspects mobilize funds and arms for Yelwater attack. Vanguard reflects on the electricity story from a slightly different angle, saying states and governments will now share payment of subsidy. Onitsha market lockdown, 10,000 shops are marked for demolition as traders complain they are open but no customers. The 68 Grammys outrage as Nigerian music superstars face disappointment again at awards. Daily Independent reads about development of the gas sector as the federal government pushes strict local content goals. Malami challenges the EFCC asks court to set aside interim forfeiture order on property. New Telegraph writes about Governor Lawal, who explains why he will not quit the People's Democratic Party ahead of 2027. He will rather run as an independent candidate if there's no PDP. Peter Obi clarifies that he will be running for presidency next year. FAC, states and federal government shared 1.96 trillion naira in December. VAT increased by 350 billion naira. And PDP fixes March 28 and 29 for National Convention. The Punch questions whether there is impact as government faces fire over that 9 trillion naira Federal Account Allocation Committee windfall. The Guardian turns attention to ubiquitous role of courts in party politics and how this damages democracy. Daily Sun, coup plot, military turns searchlight on another suspect, Hunt ex-GOC. An FCTA rally, court bars NLC, TUC, but the unions say there's no going back. Let's see what the international papers are saying, beginning with The Times. Most titles lead with the same big story, the latest Jeffrey Epstein-related revelations affecting UK politics, royalty, and establishment figures. So the Time goes with allegations that Lord Peter Mandelson shared confidential UK government emails and advice with Jeffrey Epstein, and these are being assessed by Scotland Yard. Former Prime Minister Gordon Brown has asked for a full inquiry, and Mandelson denies any wrongdoing. The scandal also includes renewed calls for Prince Andrew to face scrutiny following new accuser claims. Our newspaper front page centers on the Epstein files and Mandelson, and he's been reported to the police for leaking those files, prompting pressure on Mandelson to explain and testify. Daily Mail coverage has that infamous photo of Lord Mandelson in his underwear, focusing on emails between him, Prince Andrew, and Sarah Ferguson. Daily Mail says Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer is leading the call for Mandelson to be kicked out of the Lords, showing public outrage and political pressure. Daily Telegraph looks at those leaked emails by Mandelson again. Financial Times focused on India and President Trump moving to cut tariffs on India after the country agreed to stop oil purchase from Russia. In The Guardian, wounded Palestinians begin to leave Gaza to cross into Egypt to seek medical help after reopening of the Rafah border. Now let's see what the stories mean for everyday citizens. This day newspaper. Tinubu has again brokered peace, or is trying to broker peace in Rivers State. He has asked Minister Wike to stop an impeachment plot. Rivers governor is to recognize FCT minister as political leader. The issue of Fubara's second term is premature, according to the president. This is what he told fielding parties. Wike's candidates to be recognized in state assembly by elections. The president had previously intervened in this reverse predicament way back in 2023, and all attempts to get the warring parties to mend fences seem to have failed. Hence, this latest move by the president. There are different angles to this intervention by the president. First, he could be accused of federal overreach into state matters. Secondly, perhaps the move is necessary to protect stability. At the same time, if the president can intervene to stop an impeachment, what does this say about the independence of Rivers State legislature? Benga, what do you make of this?
I think it's not just politically expedient, but also politically convenient for President Tinubu to be intervening in such manner. Yesterday, we had reports that he said that governors were clearly the leader of the party in each state. So now I think that the 2027 fever and the prevailing atmosphere of the build-up, the race towards 2027 is beginning to take its toll. So now he had to come out to say that because he needs those structures well galvanized, and officially the governor controls those structures. But beyond, when we look at the political reality, the undertone, the underlying influence within the political space, we would know that someone played a pivotal role in ensuring that the governor becomes the governor. And when we consider that grassroots influence, we would know that there is a political leader somewhere beyond the governor. So it's just so convenient to say the governor is a political leader because he needs that 2027 ticket. So I think that the political undertone is reaching that fever pitch where he needs to galvanize those conversations and those narratives in line with the second term ambition. That seems to be what is playing out. Considering we've seen the legal impediment of not finding it easy to impeach a governor. Section 188, subsection 5 says that the chief judge, which is most likely appointed by the the governor, plays a very important role, in appointing the chief judge, those subject to the recommendation of the NJC and the confirmation of the State Assembly. But the loyalty is likely to tilt towards the governor. Okay. So the possibility of having that impeachment, and we saw how the chief judge cleverly raised that less pendant move, which means a pendant suit in favor of the governor. So when you look at all these cumulating influences within the political space, it clearly defines what it is, what we are saying today.
Yeah. And if I may just add, Venga, two things really stand out to me. The first is that, goodness, how much more odd are we going to see, odd developments are we going to see on the run-up to 2027? Because you have a PDP politician being reaffirmed by an APC president that he's the political leader of what is supposed to be an APC state. So in there's questions. And what is this going to create? What are the implications of this When we're having this debate about 001, as you'd said, Benga, the general consensus was that the governor is 001. And I've always maintained that this issue of 001 is going to be one of the most contentious issues. Now APC has already announced the rollout for their conventions and so forth. What is going to happen to those in other states where governors have decamped, who feel that, well, if Nyesom Wike, who's not even a member of the APC, can be made the political leader of a state, then somebody like Ganduje, for example, can come and say that Abba Yusuf has no right to be 001. I am the 001 of this state. How will they manage all of these intricacies going towards the convention, and what will that fallout look like? That's the angle that stands out to me.
I mean, all the states are different. You know, Rivers is different from Kano, and Kano is different from Delta, and Delta is different from Taraba, from Benue. So I think the president is handling it or managing it by a state case, although he did say that defecting governors are the leaders of the party. In spite of that, you can see that, you know, it can be flat out, you know, he has to manage it, you know, depending on the circumstance in the state. Let's stay with this day newspaper. ADC National Chairman David Mark says APC's vicious policies exposing Nigerians to untold hardship and poverty. Although poverty and hardship existed before this government, it has gotten worse according to him. If a country cannot secure its people, it's impossible to grow the economy, he argued. Mark's claim highlights widespread public frustration with the economic conditions of today, talking about inflation, unemployment, and the cost of living pressures. But is this a fair critique based on evidence or primarily political posturing aimed at influencing public perception, Yolanda?
I think it's a bit of both, because if you look at the situation in the economy right now, it's pretty tough on many people. But realistically speaking, for example, the tax reforms that we've just had launched this past month, you know, there's a lot to be desired and there's a lot to be understood. We've been talking about the tax laws that were upcoming since last year, mid-June, July. And up until now, we still haven't received the type of clarity that we need. And so, yes, I do agree that, yes, there's some political drive in this, but there also is a lot of sense in it if you look at what's happening with the everyday person. It hasn't been easy, too many things coming up. Later on, one of the headlines we have is on electricity and the tariffs. It's a little bit much.
All right, moving on to Leadership newspaper, concerns about hike in electricity tariff as government plans to end subsidy plans or payments. The government says current arrangements whereby government shoulders the responsibility of subsidies is fiscally not sustainable. With the subsidy, tariffs were kept artificially low, often below 30% of the true cost, to shield households and businesses from high generation expenses driven by gas shortages, transmission losses, and current volatility. But unpaid subsidies have now morphed into trillions of naira in arrears, creating a crisis for the government. At the same time, Vanguard report on this matter is a bit different. It says state government are now to share in bearing the cost of subsidy. The funding will come from the Power Assistance Consumers Fund, a government-backed financial pool signed to subsidize electricity bills for low-income and vulnerable households. This burden will no longer be left to federal government alone, the report says. First of all, can the government credibly talk about market-driven tariffs when the electricity sector still struggles with inefficiency, losses, and poor regulation? Yolanda, do you want to take on that?
Absolutely. On my way here to the office this morning, the streets were practically dark from my entire drive here, and I think that's the reality of many people. And so it's really unfair. If you look at it, even the NLC has spoken up about this and strongly opposed that this removal is actually somewhat deceptive, because it'll further impoverish people even more. You know, an economy where things are already tough and people are already struggling, it seems almost unfair. But also, you know, I do like that analysts have called for a phased type of way of reforming. Instead of just one-off and cutting and changing things overnight, let it be done in phases, slowly and surely, in a way that people will be able to adapt to the changes.
I think just to add to the very instructive comment from Yolanda, I think this conversation is geared towards achieving not just a cost-efficient tariff, but a cost-reflective tariff. And when you look at the reality of the Nigeria's power sector, there's a lot of questions that comes to this, because what are we actually subsidizing in a situation where the federal government pays up to close to 2 trillion naira on electricity subsidy, and yet there's nothing to show for it? So we need to look at the fundamental issues like the power purchase agreements. We have a situation where there is still what we can call an exchange rate volatility that is still affecting most of the equipment purchased by the GENCOs, who are heavily indebted to about several trillions of naira, needs to be subsidized. So we need to subsidize production rather than consumption. What the federal government is doing is subsidizing consumption, and we need to have this planning, this comprehensive planning that will set a clear roadmap to having an efficient power supply in the country. Because in a situation where there isn't this clear roadmap, where GENCOs, the installed capacity is different from, is a shortfall from the distributing capacity, it's a whole lot of quagmire, if you ask me.
Okay, very quickly, because we have to move on. Did you have anything to say about that, Vimbai?
You know what? Very quickly,
but let me just ask a question, because when Benga talks about subsidizing production and not consumption, is the problem not policy failure? Because if tomorrow you decide, okay, the government should move from consumption to subsidizing production, will that policy be effectively administered, or do we come to the situation again where the government is unable to run anything?
That's it. I think you've hit the nail on the head. The problem here is the human element of this, which is wherever you place that subsidy, how efficiently is it going to be deployed to the place it needs to be used? So the essence is that we need investment in our power sector. We can't run away from that, whether it be at the state level through the Electricity Act, or whether we're looking at the national grid. Investment is required, but there's no investor that's going to put their money down in a system where they're not guaranteed to make a profit. So, you know, liberalizing will allow for that, because we've shown that with subsidies, whether it be with petroleum or whether it be with power, we've unfortunately shown that we struggle to implement subsidies effectively. So now the conversation is, should we focus on affordability or should we focus on accessibility? Many people are saying that accessibility should be number one. Let it be expensive, but let it be available. But some people are saying that, well, you're going to price us out of the market. Well, it's just two arguments.
Let it be expensive. Be careful with
because
that.
Because we have to choose, and it's not available. So what do we do? Because first it's going to have to be available before the price can be crashed for it to become affordable. So I think getting out of energy poverty should be number one for us, because it will stimulate so many other things. I'm not an advocate for expensive electricity, but unfortunately, our past precedent with regards to deploying subsidies and letting the state assist us in these situations has led us to this. They raised a 501 billion naira bond the other day to try and pay off some of the legacy debts. But you look at the trillions that we owe; it's just a scratch on the surface of what needs to be done. So
let's see what more we can take very quickly. The Punch newspaper. Big money, small impact. Government faces fire over that 9 trillion FAC windfall. State governors are facing the mounting criticism from labor union, civil society groups that in spite of the fact that they have increased revenue, it doesn't look like that is translating to improved welfare. And also Vanguard newspaper, let's take that together. Onitsha market lockdown, 10,000 shops are marked for demolition. First of all, the good news is that the market was open yesterday in spite of the sit-at-home threats. This is after 1 week closure by the state government. This report does not share why these 10,000 shops were marked for demolition. But the question is, what exactly is the justification for doing this? And then the fact. Anybody can take on this very quickly.
When we look at the issue of the fact, it speaks to the fact that at the subnational level, there's still a huge gap of transiting from that ability to convert that fiscal windfall into sustainable capital expenditure that would benefit the people. And that's what people, civil society organizations and the watchdog for the fiscal spending of the Federal Allocation Committee sharing. But it's also underscored very important fact that the need to go back to true federalism. The states and other structures can't be coming cap in hand at the federal level to have this sharing. But now they're talking about a windfall, an increase from 5 trillion naira in 2024 revenue to sharing to now 7 trillion. And also that's regardless. No, let me just.
If I may interject here, let me just interject because we don't have time.
Okay.
On this matter, do we have a spending problem, a transparency problem, or a failure of leadership? That's the question.
I think the missing answer to this is that there is a need for a comprehensive fiscal plan.
Because even if we have
there is a need for total restructuring of this spending and sharing allocation formula.
Yeah, because even if we decide, to have the states, restructuring, so-called restructuring we're talking about, at that state level, we will not see the same problems we are seeing now in Mumbai.
This is it. We spend a lot of time on the federal budget. If you go to the state budgets, state by state, it's devastating to see what some of these budgets are being used for. When you go through each of the line items and you see there's a state recently that has allocated billions for accommodation for the state in Abuja. Why is a state spending on accommodation in Abuja? The purchase of vehicles, such lavish, exorbitant spending. Yet there's no anti-venom in primary healthcare centers. So the conversation really, Dr. Constance, you hit the nail on the head. At the state level, we're seeing a replication of what we see at the federal level, and the concern is also from us as citizens. What we see as a social contract, we need to evolve and educate ourselves, because a number of the citizens see roads as the social contract. If they see that the governor is building roads, flyovers, bridges, that means the governor is working. But infrastructure is not just limited to roads and flyovers.
Right. Don't forget that in the report, the allegations are 41% more than what was received in 2024. That is a staggering amount. And this is, in so much money. But with all this heavy reliance that the states have, which is literally 80% of Nigerian states rely on these allocations. Are the states seeing meaningful improvement? I like how you mentioned about, the anti-venom. It's a very pertinent point at this point in time, because if we do not have the basics right, how can we then now start to look at bigger projects when we can't even get, the basics right?
And now that we mentioned the anti-venom and the young lady who died, at the hospital after she was bitten by a snake. I read an article that talked about Nigerians even abdicating basic responsibility of having common medicine at home that people used to have in the past. So the person was explaining that in the past, there's certain medicine that you have at home, whether it's in your first aid or whatever it is, so that when you have this kind of situations, you know what to do. And people around, not only you and your family, people around have an idea what to do. You don't have to wait until you get to the hospital before you
can afford first aid in these days.
That's right.
Well,
and then some of these things also need to
make
be
it a priority.
Yes, they need to be in controlled environments.
Or who has AC to be powering 24/7.
It depends on what you make a priority. I mean, these things are things that it didn't used to be a big deal in the past. If you decide that you want to have a first aid because it is necessary, especially when you have children, then you have to do it. But let's quickly go to on nature. Why should traders trust this process? Won't it punish livelihoods without fair compensation and notice and other alternatives for them? I mean, they had obeyed the law of the governor, or, the notice of the governor, which was that the market should be shut down for 1 week. Now they went back to the market yesterday. Was this out of survival, or was this out of, obeying, the notice by the government? So is this a partial progress and win for Governor Chukwuma Soludo?
Well, you know, you have to be careful where you implement the stick and where you implement the carrot. You know, the report stated that the market obviously was closed for a week, that they reopened yesterday, but there were no customers. So there were few customers. Yeah, so you can create this coercion for them to open, but does the public trust exist for people to feel that they are safe and secure if they come out on a Monday? That's number one. But number two, are we not infringing on rights a little bit excessively here? Because yes, the government has a regulatory authority. They've now come with plans to say, oh, they want to upgrade the market and do all these things. But where is the right of the market owner, of the investor, the individual investor? These are individuals who don't get loans from anywhere. They don't get support or finance from anybody. This is all self-made wealth that we're seeing in West Africa, one of West Africa's biggest markets. So I think the conundrum for me is, how sustainable is it going to be when you use the stick to enforce you know, the opening of the markets, but are people really going to comply? And is this going to translate into some sort of sustainable rejigging of the market structure, the days of operation in the state?
It is true that the government hasn't invested in the market. These are personal ventures. However, they are also victims of the sit-at-home law by these non-state actors. And according to the report, 55% of the traders opened yesterday. So that's progress. It means that, if the situation continues in terms of security, there's no harassment, by unknown gunmen and the rest of them. It means that next Monday, they might even come out more. Let's take an international story in Daily Mirror. A trove of fresh Epstein revelations with political figures in the UK roped in. British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer says Lord Peter Mandelson, implicated in the Epstein files, should lose his peerage in the House of Lords. Mandelson has resigned his membership of the Labour Party on grounds that he does not want to embarrass the party further. He has apologized but says he did not collect that $75,000. In addition, Prime Minister Keir Starmer says Andrew Mountbatten Windsor should testify in court about his links to Epstein. Yolanda, is Keir Starmer's position on this matter a genuine push for accountability or a diplomatic signal with no legal teeth? I mean, why hasn't the UK taken concrete steps to ensure that Prince Andrew is maybe extradited to the US for trial or to testify?
Well, I believe that conversation is actually currently going on. And you need to, really look at this case in a broad perspective. Peter Mandelson is one of many big names that have come up in this Jeffrey Epstein chronicles, now with so much more being brought up with pictures and all of that. Just yesterday, we were looking at the further implications of being associated with him for now former Prince Andrew. And it's such a shame that the UK is going through this at the moment. Now, apparently, this former ambassador received $75,000 in payment from Jeffrey Epstein in exchange for sensitive government documents between 2003 and about 2004, which he now denies having had happened. But now, because of this betrayal, Keir Starmer is now emboldened to say that he wants him stripped of his peerage. But unfortunately, Starmer doesn't have the power to do that. That's not a decision that can be made willy-nilly. It can only be done by passing a new law. So the question is, if a Prince Andrew can be demoted to civilian status, I think we can expect the same for Lord Mandelson. I mean, it's very difficult to strip someone of being a lord, but we've seen in the UK that when they're determined to, really put their foot down when it comes to the law, then things will be done. It's just a matter of time.
Right. Vimba, if you want to jump in, but before you jump in, let me give some background. We know that this is very embarrassing for the Prime Minister, especially because he appointed Mandelson as British ambassador to the US last year. So it's clear that dealing with the political fallout from this latest disclosure is messy for Starmer. So, but with regard to Andrew, let's start by asking, what are the legal and diplomatic obstacles to Prince Andrew testifying in the US? From what we know, he is a UK citizen. not a U.S. resident, and the UK-US extradition treaty does not allow extradition simply to give testimony only for criminal charges. Your thought?
I think this also exposes some of the huge challenges that we're having in trying to tackle crimes of this nature that happen, whether it be with organized mafia systems, or whether it be, I suppose this is a type of mafia, as much as it's being whitewashed. This is one of your typical human trafficking rings that takes advantage of the young and vulnerable. And so I think that the touch point here is, how do we take down such an organization? Because of course, in the United States, they have the RICO laws, which take down, criminal networks of this depth and intensity. But it's difficult to implement, like you've said, with countries like the United Kingdom and with various other countries that the United States has preferential relationships with. So I think that at this point, there needs to be a bigger conversation about how we deal with these intercontinental crimes of this nature that happen on a daily basis, albeit not as popular as this and not as discussed as this. That's on one angle. On the other angle, I think it's also concerning that this information continues to just sort of be streamed out in bits and pieces. So it makes it difficult to be able to deal with this trial conclusively at once. So, with regards to the former Prince Andrew, it's not enough to give him a slap on the wrist and say he's a former royal. He does have to face the consequences of the law. And I think at this stage, it's time to see, how some of the multilateral organizations can step into this, because they have been watching sort of quietly from the sidelines. But like I said, it's an intercontinental crime involving some of the world's most powerful people. And it can't continue to play in the realm of controversy and headlines. Good to see America is taking firm action. Congress is issuing subpoenas. But again, I think it's not enough, because we're not seeing people facing the full wrath of the law. It's just a public trial for now.
All right. In regard to America, wielding the big stick, we know that without a U.S. indictment, American courts cannot compel Prince Andrew to appear before it. So we'll be watching to see whether that indictment comes. But even as a non-working royal, Prince Andrew's status make any form of pressure from U.S. a diplomatic issue. We know that the UK government, it will be difficult for them to be seen to strong-arm a member of the royal family without risking constitutional and diplomatic fallout for the government. Also, there's self-incrimination and legal risk that comes with that. Testifying in a U.S. court before Congress could expose Prince Andrew to a civil or criminal liability. So this thing has so many legs. Yes. His lawyers would also almost certainly advise against voluntary testimony, especially where statements could later be used against him in U.S. proceedings. And once you step into the U.S., it's a highly litigious country. Everybody has, in fact, in the U.S., they say if you have a phone, you have a lawyer. So the law case could, spiral out of control, and you have a situation where you cannot deal with. Having said that, the victims are saying that Prince Andrew, as you said, cannot get a slap on the wrist. He has to pay for alleged crimes that he has committed. So any steps taken in this direction has to be thought through very carefully. So we'll have to see how this goes. The producer has told me we'll have more time for the paper review. So we might as well go back to other stories. If there's any other story that we've touched this morning that you want to expatiate on, anyone can take on that, Benga.
All right. Well,
I actually had a story I wanted to touch on. It's been with us for a couple of days, and we spoke about it ever so slightly, but I want to go back to it. And this is the issue about the lady who lost her life to the snake bite. And I think that there's not enough information out there to people about the precautions to take, especially since Nigeria, a tropical country, has a snake season, has a dry season where you see a lot of these, you know, creeping animals, reptiles coming into our homes, and also the amount of deforestation that has been going around, especially in the big cities, and you have these animals coming out of their natural habitat and, you know, trying to find shelter in our homes. So I just think that it's an interesting story to touch on about how people need to be more aware, careful. They need to know what to do. When someone encounters a snake bite, what should you do? You know, they spoke about a lady said that Vimbai, we were speaking about this during the break, about how, you know, you need to tie your arm if there's a bite on your arm, or if it's on your leg, tie it above the area where the bite has occurred. And I think this is information that's not out there. Yes, it is, but people are not talking about it enough, especially in an environment where we're so prone to these things.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm with you on that, Yolanda. I just wonder how much we can get done, because it still goes back to sort of primary health care, yes. Which is the healthcare that is supposed to be accessible at the lowest possible level yes. of society, whether it be rural, whether those primary healthcare centers are proving to be something that we need desperately, not just for them to be built and commissioned and unveiled, but for them to be well stocked, and for them to also be a source of this type of information, for them to also be a source of educating the people in the areas close by. Because this is a case that has gotten publicity. We now ask ourselves, what is happening with those cases that don't get the publicity, that happen in rural areas?
Right.
But if I may quickly go to my story, or Benge, you go to your story.
Oh, no, just to add that to the brilliant submissions that you've put on this issue, I think that
I like it here.
this is coming to the public glare.
Do you prefer here to morning show?
No, I love
Lagos.
I love all my children the same way.
Okay. Diplomatic goodbye.
Okay. Now, this is coming to public glare because it has happened to a star.
Right.
So, do we have a data bank of those incidents of snake bites and other reptile attacks in the country? So, I think we need to create a data bank so that would inform our investments in health policy matters. That would inform our direction on health policy, because some people just die. What about those living in the rural areas? Do we have statistics about those infected with this
those people are able to manage even better, Benga. People in the rural area are not waiting for hospitals because the hospitals are so far flung away. So most times they have, natural local medicine, local
but
medicine.
But it shouldn't be, ideally.
No, I'm saying that they are more prepared than people that live in the cities.
Because they are knowledgeable about the native alternative, the medical alternative in tackling many of these attacks. But they also deserve a proper medical attention, even in the rural areas. Section 14 of the nation's constitution says that the welfare and security of every Nigerian should be the primary responsibility of government. So those people living in the rural areas should not be neglected on the basis of having that native knowledge of treating some of these snake bites.
Right.
Because we don't know the prescribed dosage. We don't. So I think that a proper primary health care service should also be extended to those living in the rural areas.
All right, Vimbai, what's your story you wanted to expatiate on?
I just wanted to take us back to politics, since we're going into that season. Front page of this day speaks of comments from David Mark from the ADC, who's saying APC's vicious policies exposing Nigerians to untold hardship, poverty, which is a similar sort of tone that we've been hearing from the opposition throughout. But my focus is more on the inauguration of committees, or the unveiling of committees that we've seen both in the ADC and the APC. So the ADC unveiled a 50-member Wise Men, Wise Women committee. I suppose that is supposed to advise on manifesto development, and I suppose they would then figure out how they'll roll out all the activities that need to happen before we go into official campaign season. Whereas you look at the APC that also unveiled their 72-member national coordinating committee for the convention, and you look at the guidelines that have been set out, the price of the forms from the ward level, both expression of interest, nomination forms, and so forth. And, you know, we just ask ourselves that all the time that the opposition has sort of spent trying to get it together versus the APC that seemed to have this streamlined process going to convention in March, and, you know, things are looking like they're going along smoothly. I really hope that the opposition will be able to make up for lost time. That's the first point. The second point, which is on a lighter note, is that on that 72-member committee I saw from the APC, I saw the name of General Christopher Musa, our Minister of Defense, who had 24 hours before this list was unveiled, had said that, oh no, he's still deciding if he's going to get into politics, if he'll become a member of APC. And then 24 hours later, we now see his name on the coordinating committee, central committee for the convention. So, you know, which just goes to show you that politics is fully at play. It's politics season in the APC. You have a general who just retired, who has just stepped into the Ministry of Defense and has already been roped in to the political structure of the APC. And the ADC, yes, issuing these statements, they're important from opposition, but is it really enough when the APC is moving full steam ahead?
Well, you know, he also mentioned that he was thinking of whether he would join the APC or not. That was already reported. That means that there is pressure on him to declare for politics. We have heard in some circles, or word on the street is that he might be involved in next year's election. We don't know for sure.
He's on the 72-member committee, so it's part of, if he's part of the convention committee, he's
so
political.
There's definitely pressure on him, one, because he's a Christian from the north, and you know there is some realignment or alignment going on with party tickets and things like that. So there is a lot going on behind closed doors. But very quickly, because we have to go soon, very quickly on the revenue. Remember that when Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was the Minister of Finance, they made it a duty to publish how much is sent to states, how much states receive every month from the federal government. And so it was the responsibility of the citizens to begin to track that and to begin to ask questions. So this 9 trillion windfall that we're talking about, it's okay to sit down here and discuss it, discuss it as a newspaper publication, discuss it on TV, but if the citizens whose lives are involved do not take a step, concrete step, to do something about it, to go there, to ask questions, to monitor, then nothing will happen. It means that the status quo will remain. So we should begin to think about our responsibilities as active citizens. It's not enough to talk. When you talk and you take no actions, nothing ever is going to change in Nigeria. I think this is where we draw the curtain for the newspaper review today. And yeah, thanks and welcome back to Abuja, Vimbai, although temporarily.
Briefly.
Okay, and that's all we have time for here on Daybreak. I think we'll be having some more conversations on some very important issue, but my producers told me that we have to wrap up because
you don't want me to leave the studio, do you?
Okay, I'm Benga Ashur. It's goodbye from me.
I'm Mumbai Mutiniri Ekpeyong. Thank you so much for your time.
And I'm Yolanda Robert. Please do keep it here on Arise News. The morning show is next. Goodbye.